There we go. Hello, everybody. My name is Carla Mattiussi, and I'm coming to you from Austintown, Ohio, remotely. And tonight we are going to talk about a very hot topic, which is working remotely and the evolving trends, things that go along with working remotely, how to prepare yourself to work remotely, and maybe most importantly, what to do to research so you could become prepared to work remotely. So before we get into some of those things, we're going to wait a couple minutes just to let everybody join. But I would like to thank the office at YSU Alumni Engagement for sponsoring us here tonight, along with our director of the Office of Career and Academic Advising, Justin Edwards, who will be co-moderating with me tonight in the chat room. So we just kind of want to let everybody know that we welcome you. This is part of a series that the Office of Alumni Engagement is doing. The next speaker will be Karen Conklin on March 14th at 7 p.m. So she will be speaking about nonprofit leadership, the do's and don'ts. So if you like this series tonight and you kind of enjoy being able to learn and connect with other YSU Penguins and alumni from home, these might be some other opportunities for you to stop in and visit and listen. So kind of like we said, this particular topic tonight is very, very hot right now. I know that many of you who are watching are either maybe in a position where you want to work remotely, or perhaps you're alumni and you kind of had a job where you were working in office or at location, but for whatever reason or for safety reasons, you're now working either completely at home or partially at home. So as I was sort of researching for this topic tonight, one of the things that struck me is all of the articles and things that are sort of popping up out there that are very vague. So for many of you, maybe you've reached a point where you've read a couple articles that have to do with designing your office in order to work from home. That's great, but not many of the articles or information go beyond that. So that is kind of where we're going to start to lead into tonight. So you could dig a little bit deeper in your preparation and learn a little bit more other than just how to set up your office, right? So the first thing that we're going to start with is going to be also what we're going to conclude with, which I believe is probably the most important, which is some people live to work, some people work to live. And what I mean by that is in the remote world, before you start applying for jobs or before you start even kind of thinking of what type of work you want to do, you have to come to your own personal satisfaction or develop your own personal philosophy on working from home. So for example, do you want to be the type of person that is on call? Is that okay with you? Other examples of somebody who maybe likes the blended work lifestyle would be if you were available 24/7, or perhaps you just worked throughout the day, you didn't have set hours. Now, to some of you, that doesn't sound like something you may want to do. If that is the case, then when you do look for certain types of remote jobs, you have to ask the questions, things like, is the time frame defined? These are the sort of things that become a little bit more important in the remote job world, okay? So here are 4 things that we're going to talk about tonight. The first thing we're going to talk about is how to interview and prepare for a remote job, okay? There's going to be a set of 12 questions that are very common that you may be asked that are going to be different, somewhat different, than if you weren't applying for a remote job, okay? So we're going to start with that. We're also going to touch on trends in remote job and internship postings from Handshake. So for those of you who are not familiar, Handshake is YSU's, we'll call it for the simple version, it's YSU's job posting board. Now there's many other things you can do with Handshake, such as schedule appointments to our office, look at events on campus and things like that. But the main reason most students use it is to upload their resume. The resume is then approved, and it's a two-way sort of viewing. You can view jobs that employers post, and employers can search for you as well, okay? So we've got some wonderful statistics that we'd like to share with you, especially for recent graduates or soon-to-be graduates who are a little afraid or a little scared that they're not quite sure what types of jobs are out there. So we'll be talking about the different sectors, because believe it or not, some sectors have increased. I know we're hearing a lot about the sectors that have decreased, but there are a lot who have increased in this particular work environment right now. We're also going to talk about how to search for remote jobs. Now, there are a couple leading websites. I particularly enjoy FlexJobs. I think it's probably the most common out there. But you can also search for remote jobs through Handshake and LinkedIn, and we're going to talk about that, okay? And then also, probably the most interesting part of our discussion tonight, we will end with how to structure your academic career as remote work expands into different sectors. This may be a little bit more directed towards students who are still in college or right at, kind of the end where they're looking to add a different skill sets that may sort of lead them. And the interesting part of this is going to be what is going on currently. So in other words, how is the current situation that we are in affecting future careers, future majors, appointments that you may want to schedule within our office to discuss these options based on a variety of combinations, okay? So let's go ahead and get started. Like I said, the first thing we're going to talk about is 12 questions. So if Justin's able maybe to put the 12 questions as a resource out there for you at some point so you could see those. Here's a list of questions, and we could always provide this to you at a later time as well, but that may be different. So if a student is applying for a remote job, they may want to schedule an appointment in our office for a mock interview and let us know that you're applying for a remote position, okay? Because we will ask you these types of questions that will help you prepare. So the first one might be something like, have you ever worked remotely? So believe it or not, you should be paying attention and you should be writing down in your resume or on your LinkedIn page if you have any experience collaborating remotely, if you are part of a distributed team. These are all words that will capture any type of software program that is checking to see if a person has worked remotely in the past. These are the types of words that are used that kind of allude to that. Other things would be something like returning inquiries within 24 hours. You want to sort of phrase your bullet points in a way that allude or even indirectly show that even though you are working remotely, you're able to manage your time, okay? Another question would be, why do you want to work from home? So you have to be prepared to answer this. You may want to allude to the benefits of working from home in terms of able to focus or ability to be productive. Of course, everybody knows that there are other benefits that may lead to you making that decision, such as able to watch your kids or take care of an elderly parent, but that shouldn't be your primary answer, okay? You always want to kind of allude to something other than, maybe a personal reason. Have you ever worked with a distributed team? So this is going to be big in the remote world. Even though you may not be in an office and you can't walk down the hall to talk about a particular project, you have to either draw on some prior experiences, or if you're a student, make sure that you are able to interact or engage in some sort of experience where you participated as a member of a distributed team. So what that means is maybe you kept in contact through Slack, or maybe you did Skype meetings, or maybe you collaborated with Google Docs. These are all ways that you can collaborate. So it's important to note that just because you aren't in person doesn't mean you aren't collaborating. It just looks different. Okay, so you still are collaborating, but it just looks a little bit different. How do you plan on communicating with your remote team? How do you stay focused on your tasks? You know, you may have your own ways of doing all these sorts of things already, but when you're in that moment and you're being asked that in a mock interview for a remote job, these are the sorts of items and things that you have to be clear on how you answer. So however you do that for you would be fine. You just have to be prepared. Some other questions might be, what challenges do you face working remotely and how will you deal with them? What do you like and what do you dislike about working in a remote office? What do you like or dislike about working at an office space, okay? So you don't want to go and necessarily say things that border on the negative, but again, you could always draw back on the positives and how you would be able to maybe prosper or be productive in the remote space, okay? What's the most challenging project you've ever worked on and executed, which could be for really any type of job or work environment, and tell us about a risk you took and failed. And here's an important one. How do you switch off from work? So remember how I sort of talked about in the beginning about how some people don't mind working 24/7, or you know, they don't mind being on call. That can sometimes happen in a remote space. If that's not you, then you need to make sure that you understand the requirements of the work environment so that you do find a good match for that, okay? So if you do want a remote job that has a structured schedule, you can find those out there. You just have to make sure that you're clear about what the requirements are. So a little side note on what is often brought up, which is, oh, I don't know if I could handle working remotely. There's no chance to socialize with my coworkers. You know, you never really talk to anybody throughout the day. So this is something that can be managed. Yes, you do socialize with your coworkers, but it could be and look very differently, right? You may not be able to socialize throughout the day, but if you schedule times and places throughout your work schedule, you can still socialize, right? So again, this sort of alludes to a little bit of what another appointment we do in our office, which is called self-assessment, where we sort of do personality assessment and talk about introversion and extroversion. So if that's something you're interested in, learning more about yourself in order to determine your style or your remote work personality, you can also schedule that type of appointment and we can help you with that, okay? So one of the things that we also want to allude to tonight are, where can you go to research more about remote work? A couple places that I've gone include Handshake, LinkedIn, and FlexJobs. So these are places that you can go as an alumni or as a current student. So by the way, Handshake has a section on their blog called Getting a Job Remotely. So for students that are looking to maybe research a little bit more about that, you can do that on Handshake, okay? So here's a couple statistics that are quite interesting in terms of the trends. So now we're getting into the trends. The vice president at Handshake, Christine Cruzavagara, I believe I'm saying that wrong, but I'll say it anyways. She recently released an article on LinkedIn on how COVID has impacted higher education trends, okay? And according to the data from Handshake, 41% plan to network online for jobs. These are recent grads. 51% plan to update their online profiles, and 50% plan to research employers. So in other words, it has shifted a little bit to more of an online presence in terms of even networking. The top 5 areas for how students have asked career centers like ours to help them include virtual career sessions, which is something we're looking to perhaps exploring in the future, which employers are still hiring, feedback on online profiles, okay? Facilitating virtual employer events and virtual alumni engagement, which is something that this could be considered. So on that note, this is an opportunity for students to really clean up and really kind of polish their online presence. So again, if this is something as a student, a current YSU student or an alumni would like someone in our office to look at, they could schedule an appointment. That would be something like a LinkedIn review, okay? That might look like a half-hour appointment where a professional would be able to review your LinkedIn page and sort of give you some feedback, especially if you're kind of thinking of maybe career pivoting a little bit or going a little bit into the remote world, how to kind of attract. So again, these are just options that you would have if you're interested in doing that. Now, here's what's interesting. A lot of people are really talking about what's impacted. As you know, certain sectors have sort of grown out of this. Others have sort of shrunk. So according to Handshake, these unfortunately are the industries that have taken the biggest hit, which is hospitality, food and beverage, and arts and entertainment. But the sectors that have grown basically because of demand are pharmaceutical and medical by 18%, 18% healthcare positions, healthcare service positions, and then 13% nonprofit. Okay, so as you can see, there's, this may impact how or where a recent graduate starts applying if they know that there's a decrease in one sector or an increase in another, because a lot of times majors, as we all know, could go into different sectors. So a good example of that is a communications major. If you're going to be a chief information officer and you want to be maybe somebody that deals with the public relations or the information at a particular company, and you know that healthcare is increasing in terms of a sector, maybe you want to get a minor or add a minor before you graduate in something that would have to do with that, or something that would place you in a sector that has a growth area, okay? Or maybe if you're interested in remote work, and we're going to talk a little bit later about that, you could pair it with an area that is growing remotely, okay? So the top 5 industries that have started reaching out for remote jobs. I don't know if this is going to surprise anybody, but internet and software is number 1. K-12 education is number 2. Healthcare, number 4. Investments, and number 5. Management consulting. So the one that kind of slid in there that's a little different is education. So although there's always been online schooling, certainly teachers who maybe want to stay locally, maybe they're close to their families, or they really like the cost of living in a particular area, can still get a reputable full-time teaching job online. I mean, they could have done this before, of course, but now there's a growth in this particular area, right? So there was an article, I believe it was May 14th, and it was about a company in California called OutSchool. So OutSchool is a online school option, and it posted right when the beginning of sort of all this was happening about they were searching for 5,000 teachers, okay? So think about how this has affected, the ability for certain sectors to post remote jobs, or different ways if you're currently an education student, or maybe you're a teacher who wants to remove yourself from in-house class management, and maybe that's a piece. I hear that a lot, that people who go into education love teaching, but they may or may not want that classroom management piece. So remote work might help them with that, okay? So I just got a question. It says, please repeat the fifth of the businesses you just listed. So the fifth would be management consulting. So there's an increase in that, okay? So, kind of talking a little bit more about the trends and everything like that. Handshake is going to be a good resource for any students because they also have that student blog on there, okay? So I'm going to transition a little bit here. Okay. All right. So I wanted to bring up the April 2020 report from Handshake. And again, this is something that you could find on Handshake. Justin, you may have the PDF copy of this if you're able to share as well. And what they found, what Handshake gathered in terms of the data, was that the majority of students are still active. Okay, so what that means is they're still searching for jobs. The shift is that it's just taking place now, especially with networking, more online, and we'll talk more about that. Another interesting piece is students have showed an increase in part-time and gig economy work, which, has always been around, but it's sort of resurfaced again. There is no new normal, with industries and skill types are affected very differently in this particular economy right now. Most recruiting teams report challenges making the shift to the new world. And what that means is from the employer perspective, okay? And employers with long-term talent objectives are eager to reach top candidates that are focused. So think about that. Excuse me. If you are looking for a job, let's say, and you want to have a particular niche, but in your local community, there isn't somebody hiring for your niche. When you open up and you look at a remote position or a global position, you are most likely going to find that somebody out there is hiring for that niche. So there is a positive spin to the increase in remote positions, okay? All right, so a couple more statistics. 41% of students plan to network online. 51% plan to update their online profiles, okay? It's showing, Handshake is showing that students are more interested in the gig economy and part-time work in the current climate. So before, students were kind of just looking for full-time. Now they sort of have shifted and have remained a little bit more open to the gig economy. Handshake has shown that students still want the right opportunity though. So even though it may be remote, it still has to be a good fit. They haven't changed their desire to do that. Now employers have shown that they still are hiring, okay? So they're kind of mid-range. 23% of employers have made no changes to their hiring plans. 54% are still evaluating the impact. 9% plan to hire fewer, 4% plan to hire more. So this kind of is more of a statistic that alludes to the hiring process that's currently going on in the economy right now, or lack thereof. So a little bit of a freeze, but not, again, nothing that shows an extreme shift, at least right now, okay? Now, here's where we come to the point where I think everybody wants to know, how much has remote work increased? How much will this stay around? I don't think this is going anywhere. I think a lot of people maybe are talking about this. We don't quite know yet, but this is an interesting statistic, that there's a 111% increase in fully remote roles posted from 2019 to 2020. And as of March 2020, Handshake has gathered data that says there's a 5% increase in remote jobs. Now, what's interesting about that to me is that it's not huge, but usually things that kind of are incremental stay slow but steady. So as you can see, even though it has been only the 1 month of data, there's already a 5% increase for recent grads to view remote jobs through Handshake, okay? Now this is a statistic that ties into what we were talking about a little bit earlier, which is how to prepare for a remote interview, okay? So it says 89% of employers are adopting or increasing virtual video interviews. So why is this important? Now I'm speaking to the alumni and to the students out there. The good news is our office can provide any type of mock interview that will meet your needs. So we're working remotely now. If you needed a phone interview, that's perfect. If you needed a video interview, we do that, and we could send you a copy of the video. If you wanted to prepare and do a mock interview for a remote job that you're applying for, we could gear the questions towards remote jobs. So my point is, it's kind of to the advantage now for the student because you're able to practice. If you're doing a virtual interview, you're able to practice your mock interview virtually now too, right? Which may not have always been the case. It says through Handshake, the April 2020 report, 73% of employers are adopting or increasing phone screens, and 59% are adopting or increasing digital engagement, including virtual events or more, okay? So that should be, a big sort of light bulb moment for you, that these kinds of things are not probably going away, okay? All right, so this is a good time to kind of stop and see what types of questions anybody might have. Feel free to add them to the chat room. Okay. Anybody has anything on that? While we're looking and waiting for any types of questions, I'm also going to kind of just briefly read a list of some of the most popular research or remote post jobs websites out there. FlexJobs, number one. There is a subscription for them, but the benefits of FlexJobs is that it's vetted. So in other words, allow me to be clear, the number one complaint that sometimes people have when researching jobs that are remote is that they're afraid it's a scam. So by going through a website that is kind of professional and vetted, and it actually has a policy, and you can only apply for those jobs through there, and there's employees sort of researching that, you get the benefit of knowing that, okay? So we get a couple questions that are coming that are asking about some of these websites. So the number one, we'll call it the top dog out there, is FlexJobs, flexjobs.com. I believe it's a subscription of $14.95 per month. I kind of have to laugh because I've been asked before if I work for them because I promote them so heavily. And the answer is no, I don't work for them. But I do, I have sort of gone to their website and seen how it is put together. And it just really is one of the classier and more effective ones out there, okay? They have a remote, FlexJobs has a sister website called Remote Co as well. So if you see either of those two, they're pretty good. Remotive is an online job board that lists software development, customer service, and product development. A website called FreeUp is a platform for freelancers with expertise in the e-commerce industry. Okay. Boldly connects individuals with work from home positions that are W-2 positions, meaning those who are hired will be treated as staff employees. Okay. Remote.co, that's the other one I mentioned. That's the sister company to FlexJobs. Outsourcely is a platform that connects remote freelancers, and we work remotely. Okay, so I'm getting this list from a article that was written by Forbes, Kelly Ann Smith, a Forbes staff member, wrote this article on March 31st, 2020, called Websites to Find Work from Home Jobs Hiring During the COVID-19 Crisis. So this was an article, again, from Forbes. Okay? So real quickly, we want to talk about how do you apply for jobs that are remote and how do you begin this process. So there are 3 ways I suggest you do it. The first is through LinkedIn. And when you go to LinkedIn, there's a way now where LinkedIn will allow you to enter up to 10 hashtags. So you could get feeds and information in your news feed. So you could put hashtags in things like, employee behavior or work remotely or entry-level accounting. And you'll start to see information start filing in. And through LinkedIn, now at the jobs tag, you could also put remote instead of a place. So for example, if you were looking for an accounting position, you would put accounting at the top, and next to it where it asked for where, you would just simply put remote, as in terms of location. The second place I would suggest looking is through Handshake. So, right now, I went to Handshake, I forget what it was the other day, and I tried to see if you could put remote in the job search place. You can't quite do that yet, but you can look for jobs that are remote, okay? So as you can see from the statistics, more and more employers will be posting remote jobs. That immediately opens up your opportunities, right? Maybe globally, internationally, what wonderful work that would be for a new student as well. And then the third place I would suggest is, of course, FlexJobs. So again, it does require a membership. So if you can't afford that right now, that would not be an option. But if you did have the membership, if you saw a job you liked through FlexJobs, you could apply through the website, which is one of the benefits of that. They also have a section at FlexJobs, so let me pull that up, that talks about your particular state ranking in terms of remote work listed. So Ohio is ranked 16 of 50. So not bad in terms of remote work, okay? The top remote careers in Ohio are HR and recruiting, that's interesting, data entry, computer, and IT. I'm looking at the website right now. It says the top remote-friendly companies in Ohio include Ohio State, Cardinal Health, University of Northwestern, Progressive, and Cardinal Health listed twice. So again, all I'm saying is that this particular website, FlexJobs, does a wonderful job of doing a lot of the research for you. There's also a tab at FlexJobs that's called Remote Job Market Map, where it lists companies based on state and all sorts of things. So the top 10 companies consistently hiring remote workers over the last 5 years include, I'll just read a couple: Appen, Dell, Kelly Services, United Health Group, Kaplan, K-12, Anthem. So my point is, if you're the type of person that likes to research companies in order to find a job, this would be a wonderful website for you, okay? Any questions on anything we've just talked about? Feel free to add a little question in our chat area if you have them. Okay, so as we come to the fourth and final topic, just take maybe a moment to listen and absorb this. This is very interesting what's happening right now. And our office and Youngstown State University is in a wonderful position to help students try to figure this out and navigate, or to even help alumni try to refigure this out and re-navigate, right? So these are some of the things that you can utilize our office for, and allow me to explain. Anytime there's a big cultural shift, what often arises from that is new opportunities, right? So think about it. About 15 years ago, there probably wasn't a major, or too many of them, that was called cybersecurity, right? Cybersecurity sort of grew from the need to have people with an expertise in both IT, and we'll call it loosely criminal justice. So if criminal justice, or we'll call it criminal behavior, married IT, they came up with cybersecurity. So as you know, as a student at Youngstown State, this is an area that you can choose to focus in, and it's a pretty, in-demand area right now, right? But my point is, it didn't exist 15, 20 years ago. So let's look at some of the jobs or majors or careers that may arise out of the COVID crisis, okay? So I wrote a couple down, and I'm curious to see what anybody has questions about this or thinks about this. If you were to tell me, a year ago that we would need somebody who's a specialist in public health and gerontology, that probably wouldn't be that big of a factor. But think of everything that we have heard on how this particular crisis has affected the elderly in nursing homes and so forth. So a lot of public health, if you were to go into public health, you could now have a specialty perhaps. Perhaps the specialty is gerontology, so that you would be able to understand how public health crises affect that particular population, right? Another area that might come out of this particular crisis is, think of it, counseling, telecommuting. So before, most insurances, not all, would cover maybe telecommuting for mental health, for counseling, okay? Now, because of the social distancing and everything, there's been sort of a relaxing on that. So if you're a student right now and you are thinking of being a counselor, did you ever think that it may benefit you to have a background in some type of telecommunications, or maybe something to do with computers or technology, so that way you're maybe a lead in that particular area? Other things, I know that this is going to come. If there's an increase in remote work, you may be the type of person that wants to have a business that assists folks who want to have home offices. So think about it. Let's say you have an interest in information technology, but you've also always wanted to be your own businesswoman. So maybe you have your major in IT and you get a minor in entrepreneurship. When you graduate, maybe you specialize in helping people set up their home offices. Because I guarantee you that, with more remote work and the increase in people working from home, not everybody has an IT background. They may want to hire somebody that has that type of background, and that may be a new type of business we will be seeing, okay? Another example of that, and as I am speaking with my background, it's, I'm thinking of this, for the creative folks out there. If you're a student and you're a fine arts major or a painting major, there are going to be people who have home offices that are going to hire people to decorate the home office, or maybe they want a personalized background. For example, a girl I used to babysit when I was young, and she was even much younger, currently works at Disney, and I know sometimes she does graphic design from home. Wouldn't it be great if she were able to hire somebody to do a background in her home office that included maybe visuals of Mickey or Minnie or Disney type art and graphics? For me, it would be wonderful if I had a background in a home office that maybe had the colors of YSU, painting that included that. So the reason I'm bringing these things up is take advantage, pay attention to, the trends of what's kind of going on in terms of the sectors that are increasing in remote work, or the jobs such as counseling, which we would never have thought of before, really, to add a minor in something that has to do with IT or telecommuting or technology. Our office can help with those sorts of things. So if you are interested in sort of designing or coming up with a long-term plan on how to build your skill sets, or you want to know what types of majors to match with minors to create very specific skill sets for things that you would like to be doing in your future, our office helps students with that. So the Office of Career and Academic Advising at YSU, We are currently working remotely. We work with exploratory undecided students, and then we also help students by empowering them with their professional development, okay? So these are just some of the things that we've talked about through the evening tonight. I'm opening it up for any types of questions that you may have. We've come sort of to the end of what I planned to talk about, and I could see that there's some comments. So if you have anything that you would like to ask, now would be a wonderful time to do it. So yeah, we just really wanted to thank everybody for the opportunity to talk a little bit more about something that is really a hot topic, as it should be. If anybody has any suggestions for future topics that you would like our office, the Office of Career and Academic Advising, maybe to address in the future, now would be a good time to do that. Tonight's lecture basically was focused on remote work and sort of evolving trends. We could, definitely follow up with something in the same category, or if there's something else that you would like us to dig a little bit deeper in, or go a little bit maybe in a different direction, we would be happy to do that. Again, my name is Carla Mattiussi, and I want to thank our director, Justin Edwards, for sort of managing the comment section tonight. Also like to thank Heather at the YSU Alumni and Engagement Office for allowing us to have this platform. I do think I see one question here. It says, Flex Jobs has a sister company. What was it called? And it is another job search application. Okay. So the sister company to Flex Jobs is RemoteCo, REMOTE.co. And it's just like a basic, it's another website. Yeah, and Justin just sort of mentioned that as a good reminder, our office is open to alumni as well. So, to the point, if you find yourself working from home, or if you're in a situation where your sector or where you're kind of working right now maybe is affected by the current situation, you want to explore remote work for the first time, we can also assist alumni with those sorts of appointments. I mentioned this earlier, but it's worth mentioning again. If you have a LinkedIn account and you would like a professional to sort of do a LinkedIn review, that would be an appointment that's possible right now as well. Okay. Along with our other appointments, mock interviews, certainly the self-assessment appointment and the wide variety that we have. So by calling 330-941-3515, that's a great way to schedule appointments as well. Okay, so just as a wrap up, our next lecturer will be Karen Conklin on March 14th at 7 p.m. and she will be addressing the topic of nonprofit work, nonprofit leadership, okay? So thank you, and we look forward to hopefully seeing you again in this platform. And I appreciate everybody who took the time to listen tonight. So everybody, thank you and have a great night. Bye now.